Today, I don't feel like doing anything. I just want to lay in my bed. I don't feel like picking up my phone, so leave a message at the tone, because today, I swear I'm not doing anything. Nothing at all. Welcome to another episode of Life at Peace. So that was my decidedly less musical rendition of the Lazy song by Bruno Mars. So I hope you guys enjoyed that in the cold open. But as you guessed it, we're talking about laziness today, and I prefaced this at the end of my procrastination episode to give you guys a heads up on what is coming, or what was coming. So I have several scriptures I'm going to share with you guys because the Bible is not silent at all about this issue of laziness, and God articulates very clearly how he feels about it and what his thoughts are towards the lazy person. So Proverbs is a book that really capitalizes on that, and we're going to go through several passages in there. And I also have a couple of pop culture references to share with y'all that I'm excited about. But first, laying the groundwork, the foundation. What is laziness? Expectation, or rather the perception versus the reality of it. So for me, just in my mind, I kind of go to the stereotypical idea or this image of a person sitting on the couch at home, the remote's in their hand, eyes glazed over from watching too much TV, and their brains rotting because they've just done nothing for so long. So that's my image of when I think of a lazy person, I think of that. But in reality, as I was thinking about it, there's more than one way to be lazy, and it can come out in different forms. So we could be working side by side with some lazy people. Maybe as you're listening to this, if you're a working professional, you maybe have thought of a couple of people just now. But you can still show up to work and get your job done and do enough to keep the supervisor, manager, your coworkers off your back and still be lazy, because up here, mentally, you are checked out. You don't have any aspirations to grow or to better yourself or to pursue other opportunities. You're just content to stay doing the same thing day after day. Now, this isn't to get confused with shunning routines. Routines are good. I believe they offer some predictability, some stability, some order, and some just a sense of purpose, honestly, to our lives day to day. They keep us from just waking up and not really knowing what's going to happen, which, I mean, in some sense, maybe sometimes, no, for me, that's exciting if I don't always know what's going to happen, but other times it can be maybe a source of anxiety. So if you have a routine that helps you stay on track and gives you some type of mental structure for how your day is going to go. So I'm not speaking against routines, but what I am saying is that going through the motions, as we've heard that phrase before, that can be a form of laziness, because after a while, we no longer see the purpose of what we're doing. We're just doing it to do it, and because it's what we've always done. And that's a point where we can get stagnant and stop trying to grow, which can all be rooted in laziness and in a desire to exert minimal effort or no effort. So in this sense, laziness is very comfortable to us because it ties back into this principle of inertia that I mentioned in procrastination in that episode, where an object at rest will stay at rest unless or until acted upon by an outside force, and the same is true for an object in motion. If we're used to kind of just slugging our way around, or well, I don't even know what that term is. If we're used to just going through the motions and not putting much thought into what we're doing, then it might be hard to snap out of that trance in a sense. So here is where I want to introduce the first scripture. It's Proverbs 10:4. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. And we'll notice a pattern here between the use of the word lazy and diligent. Those are both used several times throughout Proverbs and even in the scriptures I have today. But the difference between a lazy person and a diligent person. So poverty, there's a saying I grew up hearing. I don't actually know if it's a scripture, if it's just a saying that developed as a result of scripture. But if a man don't work, he don't eat. That's what my parents taught us from a young age. Is it's important to go out and work hard, because that's where we can see the fruits of our labor. You know, we have to sow, we have to put in the effort and the time and our energy to work and get things done. But as a result of that, we can enjoy the fruits of our labor. We can enjoy, in practical terms, that would be you get to enjoy your family, you get to enjoy your house or wherever you live. If you have a car, you get to enjoy the wealth that you bring in, which allows you to purchase things that you might want or go on trips, take vacations, whatever you want to do. So those are all examples of the fruits of our labor, and you can only get that from working. And if you're, so by contrast, if you're a lazy person, if you're choosing not necessarily with just working, but if you're just choosing not to do anything with your life or to make something of yourself, then you're on a fast track to poverty because you're not putting in the work that's required to really just to improve overall or to have the kind of life that you want. The next passage I have is Proverbs 12:11. Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. So this is the same idea, and this honestly might be the passage where if a man don't work, he don't eat. That might be where this came from. But chasing fantasies is something I'm going to explain a little bit more later with the pop culture references. But in the context of this passage, it leads me to the way I interpret it is people who are just sitting around dreaming instead of doing. And there's nothing wrong with having dreams. It's good for us to have dreams. We're supposed to have things that we want to work towards or visions for our lives and ways we want to get there. But in this context, chasing fantasies would be the equivalent of just sitting around and having all these grandiose ideas of, man, I just can't wait until I win the lottery and then I'll spend $10 million on XYZ. And I don't have an issue with playing the lottery, so hear what I'm saying. But it's fantasies in the sense that it's things that are so far out there and you have no plan or no path for getting to it. You're just talking, you're just dreaming. So I believe that's what Proverbs 12:11 is talking about. Proverbs 13:4. A sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. So there we go, that word diligent again. And sluggard, which we introduced that word in the procrastination episode. So the definition again is a habitually inactive person or a lazy person. So a sluggard's appetite is never filled because they're never going out to do the work that they need to do to fill their appetite. But the diligent people are doing that work. They're disciplined, they have their plans, they have their things written down, they're persistent about pursuing their goals. So that is the big difference between a diligent person and a lazy person. Proverbs 24 verses 30 through 34. So this is the passage, and you can read it in your Bible or on your phone app, but because it was too long for me to type out and just in light of this episode. But this one is talking about the passage. It's the writer is speaking of when he walked past a vineyard and noticed that the walls were crumbling and everything looked like it was in ruins and the vegetation was overgrown and it just looked totally neglected. And I referenced this passage actually in the procrastination episodes. You see a lot of this stuff is tying together. But I think this overgrown vineyard is a metaphor for what our lives can look like when we are lazy, when we just give up, we throw in the towel, we stop caring about what's around us or what's happening around us. And we just let everything go to waste because we're not tapping into our potential. That passage, I believe, is a metaphor for that. Matthew 25 verses 24 through 29. So breaking out of Proverbs for a second, this is the parable of the talents. And I did an episode on this a while back called Use What You've Got. But I keep going back to this parable because there's just so many lessons to glean from it. And I have it in this episode in particular because after the master returns from the trip, so I'm paraphrasing just to catch you guys up to speed. The master decides to go on a trip, and before he leaves, he calls 3 of his servants together and gives them each different amounts of talents or different amounts of bags of gold, depending on the translation you're reading. So they each have the responsibility to go out and invest those talents or use them so that when the master returns, he can see what his investment paid off, or how his investment paid off. So the first 2 servants, they go out and they invest their talents and they bring back twice what they were given in the first place. However, the 3rd servant ends up being the problematic one because he, fearing his master and thinking that he's a hard man and he's tough to work for, he gets scared and he just goes and hides his talent in the ground. He buries it. So when the master returns and evaluates how each of them performed, he gets to the 3rd servant and is angry with him because he buried that talent instead of going out to use it. And the specific words that the master uses to describe the servant are, "You wicked and lazy servant." Now, wicked is already bad enough. Like I never would want to be called that. But the master also threw in lazy as well. The way that reads to me is putting both of those on par with each other, wickedness and laziness. And this suggests that the servant's laziness was highly offensive to the master because, and this is my interpretation is how and just how the Holy Spirit has revealed this to me as I was preparing for this episode. Laziness can be an act of defiance, of rebellion, and of disobedience. Because when we choose to be lazy, when we choose not to do anything with what God's given us, we are choosing to check out of what He's trying to do in His kingdom. We're declaring in so many words or by our actions that our comfort and our willingness just to sit on what we've got is more important to us than going out to use it and to share it with people, to share it with His other image bearers that He created to be in community and fellowship with us. We're choosing our own comfort over our mission to go out and make God's word known and make His character known. And it's disobedient because in the parable, for example, the master expected them to do something with what he gave them. So the servant deliberately went against that order, went against that wish, and chose what he wanted to do over what the master was telling him to do. And turning back over to Proverbs, we've got Proverbs 16. So this passage inspired a saying that goes like, the idle mind is the devil's workshop or the devil's playground. This is another saying that I heard growing up from my parents, and they got it from their grandparents. So it's been floating around for a while, but this one is loaded with meaning. So an idle, I-D-L-E, an idle mind is the mind of someone who isn't about anything. So that's the theme here. Laziness is all about you're not doing anything with your life. You're not seeking opportunities to grow. You're not investing in yourself, and whether that's in your health or your intellect or financially, you're not doing anything. You're just taking up space is what this all comes back to. So, and just hear my heart on this. That's not true. Like, everyone down here was created for a purpose. So I'm not saying that anyone's life is meaningless, but I think that's one of the reasons that God is just disapproves of laziness so much, is that it's an affront to what He's created us to do. We're supposed to be down here helping people and pointing people to His kingdom, and we can't do that if we're choosing to opt out, if we're not participating. So going back to the idea of an idle mind, this is the mind of someone who is not about anything. So they've got nothing going on, nothing that's holding their interest or their attention. And because of this, the devil's workshop, Satan, one of the sneaky ways that he can influence us or come into our lives and wreak havoc is by catching us in isolation or catching us in those periods where we don't have anything to do. So if we don't have anything going on in our lives, like bigger picture, I'm not talking about just a lazy Sunday or a Saturday where you're at home watching TV. Just habitually, if you choose to do nothing with your time, then you could be a prime target for getting into trouble, getting into crime. People sitting around plotting how they're going to go rob a bank or pickpockets or just do any type of theft or a break-in or arson, setting stuff on fire. People who sit around plotting that kind of stuff, those aren't godly inspirations. Those aren't godly ideas. God didn't give them that idea to do that. That's from the devil. That's from Satan. And people who are out working every day and trying to provide for their families and use the gifts that they've been given, they don't have time to be thinking about stuff like that. They're not the ones sitting around plotting out crimes. And yes, I know there's white collar crimes too, like embezzlement and you're stealing from your company and accounting scandals. I know all those happen as well. But I'd say for most people who are just trying to make a decent life for themselves, they don't have the time to be thinking about committing crimes or what they're going to do to make someone else's life miserable. They just don't. That doesn't cross their minds because they're too busy trying to focus on themselves and on being good stewards of what they've been given. This extends past crime, though, because that's not the only way that Satan comes in and troubles our thoughts. He can also give us thoughts of he can stir up anxiety within us. He can stir up that feeling of comparison where maybe we're not happy with where we are and our neighbor is doing great, or it seems on the outside everything's going great for them. And because we don't want to take the time to put in the work that they're doing to get to where they are, we just get jealous. We settle for being jealous instead, and we compare our lives to theirs. Satan can also come in if we're not careful, if we're not trying to stay busy, and he can stir up those feelings of depression and even suicidal thoughts. So one of the reasons that we fall victim to laziness is that we lack motivation or goals, and as I've mentioned a couple times in this episode. And so if we don't see the point of what we're doing, or we don't see the path that it's leading to, or we don't think we have a purpose, then those are all ways that we can start entertaining the depression and suicidal thoughts. And that's one major way that Satan tries to attack us, as through our minds. Mental health is a big thing now. And I'm sure it's always been, but there's only in recent years did we just start to put a name to it. But Satan goes after our minds, y'all. And if we're lazy, if we're just not using our time wisely, then we open ourselves up to those attacks. So I told you guys I have a couple of pop culture references I wanted to share with y'all. And this first one is from Spider-Man 2. It's the OG Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. Came out in 2004, I believe, and the director, it was Sam Raimi. I believe that's his name. But anyways, so this is my favorite movie in the first franchise, the first three Spider-Man movies. It was just so well done, and I've watched it so many times, so that's why I'm about to reenact a scene for y'all. But this particular scene, Peter Parker is going to go meet Otto Octavius. Peter's friend Harry has connections with Otto, and so Peter's trying to write a paper on fusion for his college class that is overdue. And what better way to write that than to go and interview the guy who's doing the biggest fusion project, arguably, in the history of New York City. So in the exchange, this is the introduction, if I can find it. Yep. So Harry gets the two of them together, and then he steps off. And so the introduction is a little bit awkward at first because, Peter Parker, if you know his character, he's pretty awkward. But he starts trying to speak, and then Otto jumps in and he says, "Parker, now I remember you. You're Connor's student." Dr. Connors is Peter's professor. "He tells me you're brilliant. He also tells me you're lazy." Peter comes back kind of with a nervous laugh, and he's like, "Well, been trying to do better." And then Otto ends his exchange, this introduction, by saying, "Well, being brilliant is not enough, young man. You have to work hard. Intelligence is not a privilege, it's a gift, and you use it for the good of mankind." In this way, Otto gently but sternly reprimands Peter for his laziness. And to add some context to this, Spider-Man 2 was such an interesting movie because the premise of the movie is Peter is conflicted about his identity. He doesn't know whether he wants to be Spider-Man or if he's supposed to just be a regular guy settling down, chasing after Mary Jane Watson, the girl he's had a crush on since elementary school, and just have a normal life. So he's wrestling with this conflict for the entirety of the movie, and it comes out through him being very unfocused and distracted in everything he does. He gets fired from his job at the beginning of the movie. What else happens? He misses Mary Jane's play that after he's promised her extensively that he's going to make it there to support her. He's always running late for class in college, and even to the point where his professor is just like, "Dude, get it together, you're failing. Like, I can't do this anymore." So all throughout the movie, he is just wrestling with this so much, and it takes away from his ability to commit 100% effort to anything. And as a result, even though Peter is trying to wear all these different hats and he's working hard and he's trying to keep up with everything, he still comes across as lazy because he's so unfocused and distracted. And so that's why Dr. Connors tells Otto that Peter is brilliant, he's smart, he's intelligent, he's got a lot to contribute, but he's lazy because it's not going anywhere. It's not focused in any particular direction or on any one thing. So that's why I wanted to highlight that Otto's reprimand of Peter. He doesn't want Peter to keep taking his intelligence for granted because Peter is a genius. He's very smart. I mean, he designed his own Spider-Man costume. He figured out how the suit works and everything like that. And Otto Octavius doesn't want Peter to waste his potential, which ironically, Otto's the villain of that movie. So if you want to talk about wasted potential, but so in the same way, paralleling our lives to this to the story of Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2, we've all been given gifts by God. And this goes back to the parable of the talents that I talked about earlier. When we choose laziness, we become unwilling participants in building God's kingdom on the earth. And as a result of that, we also rob people of the chance to be blessed by us as believers. And we rob them of the chance to experience God's love through our lives. So as believers, we carry something very special with us. We carry the news of the gospel. We carry truth, objective truth, the only true thing, the only thing that is irrefutably true and undeniable, is that God is the creator of the heavens and the earth, and he created every single one of us for a purpose, to glorify him and to experience and enjoy his glory to the full. So we rob people of the chance to experience that if we choose to sit on our gifts. So whether that's if you're a good writer, and you're a good storyteller, if you're a good singer, chef, if you have the gift of encouragement or leadership or teaching, whatever you have been given that has been made clear to you at this point in your life, if you continue to sit on that or choose to throw it away, then you are robbing someone of the chance to get to experience God through your life. And there's a song called "The Last Jesus" by Kirk Franklin that one of the lines is, "We may be the only Jesus they see." So everyone's not going to go pick up a Bible, but they will pay attention to how you're living, how we're living. They'll look at how you treat people, how you talk to people, how you put pride in your work or don't. They'll look to see if you have integrity, what your character's like under pressure. How do you treat people when you're stressed, when you're having a bad day, if you're irritated? Do you bite people's heads off, or do you get it under control and try to still exhibit gentleness and kindness in your interactions? So that's the stuff that people are watching for, and they may not come up to your face and tell you that, but they are observing. They want proof that Christians are different from everything else they're seeing in the world. So that ties into our gifts, because if we're not using those, if we're not going out and being the hands and feet of Jesus, then we are causing a lot of people to miss out on his goodness and his love for them, and we're possibly costing them the opportunity to enter into a relationship with him. Now, that's not to say that God can't use someone else to still reach that person, but we should be honored that he chooses us. He wants to use us, specifically, each one of us, individuals, to go out and reach people for him. The second pop culture reference I have is from a play called Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. So I never have actually seen this play, but I analyzed it in one of my grad school classes, and I wrote a paper on it, just an analysis paper. But the main character in this play is named Willie Loman. He is a salesman, and a pretty mediocre one at that. He hates his job, his customers don't enjoy making deals with him, and he is described as petty, mean, and prideful. And Willie, because of where he's at in life and his current line of work, he always is looking for a way of escape. Except his escape turns out to just be dreams, so he chases fantasies, if we go back to Proverbs 12:11. He's one of the people all day who's just wishing he could be anywhere but where he is at the moment. So he wants to be an architect, he wants to be a business owner, he even has visions of his sons traveling the world and promoting a Loman line of sporting goods and other apparel. And his sons have never at any point expressed interest in doing that, but that's just a dream that Willie projects onto them because it's better than where he is now. But the problem with his dreams are that they are so grandiose that he doesn't have a clear path to success articulated for any of them. So instead, he just settles where he is and continues to trudge through his career. And eventually, the play is pretty sad how it ends, but he goes into a depression, and he actually crashes his car on purpose so that the insurance proceeds from the accident will cover his sons, so they can have some money to make a better life for themselves. So, pretty sad. I mean, it's in the name, Death of a Salesman. So I guess in this case it meant like a literal death at the end of the play. And this ties into laziness because Willie's character throughout the play, he is working, he's trying to make a living, support his family, but he's out of touch with what's going on around him. He's got immediate problems in his vicinity to take care of, but he'd rather be in La La Land thinking about where he wants to be than address those. Even in the play, his wife, her name is Linda, she tries to get him to come back down to earth and let him know, hey, I know that this job is tough, but we got all this stuff to take care of, so please, focus. So she tries to speak some reality and some pragmatism into his dreams, but every time she tries to do that, Willie cuts her off, and he won't hear it. He's not having any of it. So he is stubborn, and he refuses to let go of these fantasies that he has. And because of his stubbornness, he causes his family to be miserable, and even more so, he throws them a curveball when he ends his life, and they're just left wondering what the heck, Willie. So this goes back to the point that we can still be working, but we're lazy because we're mentally checked out of what's happening around us, and for a lazy person, it's easier to dream than it is to do. So I always like to end on a positive note when possible. And now that we know laziness is an issue, we already knew it going in, but now that we've addressed it and how it can be problematic, what can we do about it? Well, one way is we can set small goals and celebrate small victories. So laziness can often come about because we feel, just like in Willie Loman's example, that we just want to do everything, and we just don't know how to get from where we are to where we're trying to be. And so because it feels too daunting or overwhelming, we'll just kind of shrink back and be like, well, I guess I'm just going to stay here and not even try. But if we set smaller goals, things are more attainable, bite-sized, then we can accomplish those much easier, and we can celebrate a small victory along the way. So an example from my life, I have a bad habit of leaving my clean clothes in the hamper after I take them out of the dryer, and they will just sit there for weeks. And until finally I'm tired of it, and I'm just like, forget it, and I fold everything, and it usually takes about 45 minutes to do at that time. But so that's something I'm working on. But one small victory I had this last weekend was I washed and dried my clothes in the same day, and I went ahead and folded them and put them away in the same day. That does not always happen. So it can be things like that, or maybe emptying out the trash instead of just trying to cram one more thing in there and smash everything down. No, you see it's full, tie it up and go take it out. Number 2, when the thought of, I should do this right now, whenever that enters your mind, do it. Act on it right then. So this is how laziness and procrastination can tie in together. They're very similar. And that's one way we can defeat both of them, honestly, is when you think of stuff that, even if it's a fleeting thought of, I should probably do this, do it. Don't push it off. Don't say, I'll come back to it later, or I'll remember it later. I do that all the time. It doesn't happen. And then usually you've totally forgotten about it, and then it's time for it to come up again. You're like, oh crap. And by then you really have to get it done. So if you can get into the habit of doing things now, like as the thought crosses your mind, that would really help form a new habit to overcome laziness. And the third one I have is to get into community. It's really hard to be lazy when you know other people are counting on you or waiting for you or expecting you to contribute something. It's really hard. I volunteer at my church on Thursday nights for the young adult ministry. And so before I was a volunteer, if I didn't want to go to church on Thursday night, I just wouldn't. I didn't have to report to anyone. I didn't have to let anybody know. I didn't have to worry about someone trying to track me down. Now I'm a volunteer, so I have a commitment that I've agreed to take on. So that means I need to be there every Thursday night when possible. Of course, stuff comes up, but for the most part, I need to be there every Thursday. And if I can't make it, then I have someone to report to and let them know that I'm going to have to sit out for that week. But having accountability is key, because when people know that when you have a commitment that you're supposed to be honoring, then it's on you to make sure that you honor it. And people reserve the right to ask you, hey, what's going on? Or where were you? We missed you last week, if you don't show up and you're not pulling your weight. So whether you're volunteering at church, or if you're in a community orchestra or choir or some other group, if you play soccer or play some other sports or bingo, or you have something that you're involved in with another group of people, they can hold you accountable and help you combat laziness or wanting to check out so you have that group there that's looking out for you. And that about wraps things up for this episode, y'all. So thank you guys. Follow me on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And share this episode with a friend or two. Send us a text. I now have a text feature enabled on the podcast. If you listen to it through Apple Podcasts, you can send us a text at the there's a link there with any questions or concerns or things you would like for me to cover. And I'm happy to honor those as they come in. But I appreciate you guys. Next episode will be about work, the institution of work, and God's good design for it. So I'll see you guys in the meantime. Take care, be about your business, and peace.